So Greta Gerwig's second movie, Little Woman, came out a couple weeks ago, and I gotta say, I adored that movie. I'm not familiar with its source material, but every frame of that film is so soaked in care that it was just such a joy to watch. It also got me thinking about the first film Greta Gerwig wrote and directed, Lady Bird. Lady Bird was released in 2017 by A24, and it was then nominated for a whole bunch of awards, including but not limited to Best Picture. Lady Bird is easily in my top 30 movies, and I know that doesn't sound very impressive, but that actually means a lot. It's such a beautiful and well-crafted story with actual characters that feel like human beings, and its direction is so distinctly it. No other movies feel the same as Lady Bird. Even Little Woman doesn't really feel the same as Lady Bird. My brain's been, this is what I have written in the script here, my brain's been tossing and turning as to why I love this movie. At the end of the day, there's just a lot of reasons. Though the film story itself is a very compelling and relatable one, its execution is what truly makes it effective. I know that can be said about any movie, or really any piece of media, but for myself, the word authenticity comes to mind. This video isn't really an analysis of the film's plot, but I do think it's important to actually address what it is about. Spoilers, by the way. Lady Bird follows Christine Lady Bird McPherson, a teenage girl living in Sacramento, California, and is more or less presented as a coming-of-age story. It focuses a lot on Lady Bird's relationship with her mother, Marion. Marion's mostly seen to be trying her best, but her and Lady Bird are just so different that they can disagree very quickly. Lady Bird seeks independence from her parents and wishes she had a more grand life, but she still loves and appreciates her mother in the end, as Marion does her. Though Lady Bird may initially come across as snobbish to some, she's really just human. That said, their relationship is only the focal point. There are many aspects to the coming-of-age story presented. The movie's more a sequence of moments than it is a traditional three-act narrative. The film takes place across about a year, so you're more just seeing how these characters change. Saoirse Ronan, who plays Lady Bird, has described the film as a photo album, which I'd say is pretty accurate.
I keep describing it as sort of like a photo album, and every moment that Greta has chosen to like show and spend time with is so considered and well thought out, and she's done such a brilliant job. Like, that's her first film.
I'm not the first one to say any of this about Lady Bird, but it's an incredibly moment-to-moment story. Nothing is glamorized. It's something Gerwig has spoken towards in the past. She chose not to retroactively give Lady Bird the kinks to listen to or something. These moments are presented how they would have actually happened, as goofy as they may sometimes be. That means you have these scenes of, say, Lady Bird and her friend Julie crying as they listen to Dave Matthews Band's Crash Into Me. As I said, in no ways does Gerwig romanticize or glorify youth. Characters do silly things and say silly things. Some would actually call Lady Bird a selfish character, and though I can relate to a lot of her desires and disagree with that stance, you have to appreciate the pure honesty present in the film. And this next thing doesn't really support any of my arguments in any way, but it's also just such a funny movie. I'd say it's equal parts drama and comedy, but the jokes work.
You can't do anything unless you're the center of attention, can you? Yeah, well, you know your mom's tits, they're fake. Totally fake. She made one bad decision at 19! Two bad decisions!
Another really fascinating aspect of the film's honesty is how Gerwig and her crew designed it to look like a memory. Lady Bird's production designer Chris Jones has spoken towards this in the past with Vanity Fair. Speaking with Gerwig, Sacramento was said to feel very pastel with lots of greens, yellows, pinks, and golds accenting it. Jones compares Gerwig's vision of early 2000s Sacramento to the paintings of Sacramento artist Wayne Thiebaud. It's not difficult to see similarities present in Thiebaud and Lady Bird's respective color palettes, and the amount of care put into the film's look pays off. Lady Bird, the character, has this really beautiful monologue at the end of the movie. She talks about her emotional first drive through Sacramento, and the environment completely and utterly breathes. It does across the entire film, but this one scene comes to mind for me. An environment can be just as powerful as the characters inhabiting it, something Gerwig and the rest of her team certainly understand. Photographer Lise Sarfati was also a large influence on the film's look. Her photos are incredibly simple in nature, but that's very much why they're effective. There's little glamour in her photography, she's really just capturing humans living in moments. To quote Lady Bird's director of photography, Sam Levy, they're just very beautiful and dreamy, which I think applies to Lady Bird as well. Sarfati and Thiebaud's works are more similar than they may initially appear. More than most things, focused on capturing still life in terms of its reality and tone, and that influence is why I would say the movie succeeds. It's like I said before, it's about honesty. I could have called this video Lady Bird Honesty in Filmmaking instead, and it really would have meant the same thing. That sense of honesty is precisely why Lady Bird suddenly feels so much greater in comparison to, say, Love, Simon. Love, Simon really isn't a bad movie, but good lord is it ever an inauthentic one. And I guess I just bring Love, Simon up because it's very much trying to be the same thing that Lady Bird is. I don't need to dwell on its plot too much, and this video isn't even about Love, Simon, but it centers on Simon, a high schooler who has to face adversity and come of age. Whatever that means, that's a grossly simplified synopsis. So to speak more specifically, it's about Simon dealing with his sexuality and coming out. I'm not saying the character of Simon is an unrelatable one, or that the movie's narrative as a whole is unrelatable, but when it comes to filmmaking, I just think it's really lacking. The plot of Simon's coming out and all of that is great, and though I've not read the novel it's based on, I assume it's great too. It's just in the presentation where I think things go wrong. In Lady Bird, there's a big plot point that Lady Bird is mildly embarrassed of where she lives because her house is small, so she ends up lying to her new cool friend Jenna Walton that she lives in one of the big houses. It's a very relatable scenario, mostly being grateful for what you have, but still wishing you had more. Sacramento and its houses are characters, and they add to the story in meaningful ways. You watch Love, Simon, and the environments all feel so generic and artificial. Simon lives in a huge house, every character has big bedrooms, his one friend drives everyone to school with the car in the morning, everyone looks like a model. Real life just isn't like this. I completely understand Love, Simon wasn't trying to be about living in a small house, but there was no attention paid to building a world for its characters to live in, and it really shows. I have a hard time believing Love, Simon's characters exist outside of that movie, and I love Lady Bird for the exact opposite reason. When your movie's world doesn't feel real, the story doesn't feel real either. Love, Simon lacks authenticity, which I believe to be one of the most important aspects of any coming-of-age story. Though its story has substance, the film lacks style, which is still really important. Nobody behind the scenes cared about that film's look. Also, may I add, I find it extremely hilarious that Greta Gerwig has specifically said that, and I quote, she didn't want to make it like per adult person retroactively giving these kids the kinks. And meanwhile, Simon literally listens to the kinks in one scene. I didn't even make this connection until I'd already finished writing the Love, Simon section of the video, but it is hilarious. Really puts all of this in perspective if you ask me. So really, that's why I make this. Not as an end-all be-all video essay on why Lady Bird's narrative is genius, or 5 things you missed about Lady Bird, but just a discussion that I believe to be worth having. Authenticity matters. A lot to me, in movies or novels or anything really. Between its honest story and moments, Sacramento's distinct look and feel, and its authentic presentation, all of this adds up to one of the lines I started this video with. No other movie feels like Lady Bird. Though I would have been literally 1 year old during the movie's events, it's always so easy for me to sink into its world regardless. If you've seen the film, I hope I've done it justice if you're a fan of it. And if you're not a fan of it, perhaps all of this can show you why someone such as myself is. If you've not seen the film but still decided to watch this entire video and have it spoiled, I'm not sure what's wrong with you, but I would certainly recommend that you watch it. It's crafted so meticulously, and that's right, it is very authentic. I said the phrase Lady Bird 29 times in this video, by the way. 30 now.